Tonight, we're traveling back to one of history's most famous moments, the assassination of Julius Caesar. You know the basics, the Ides of March, the Senate, Brutus and his dagger. But what about the strange warning Caesar ignored, the bizarre aftermath of the murder, or the fact that the conspirators may have believed they were reenacting an ancient sacred ritual? Let's uncover the story behind the story. Our story begins on March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March. The air in Rome was thick with tension and, according to later historians like Plutarch, a series of eerie omens. The standard telling is that a soothsayer warned Caesar to beware the Ides of March, but the lesser-known details are far more chilling. It's said that the night before, his wife, Calpurnia, dreamed that the pediment of their house collapsed and that she held her murdered husband in her arms. Perhaps the strangest omen involved a ritual. That morning, Caesar was sacrificing an animal, a common practice before important events. The priest found the animal had no heart, a terrifying sign to the Romans, who believed it meant the gods had abandoned the offering, and by extension, Caesar himself. Even on his way to the Senate, the story goes that someone slipped a note into his hand, detailing the entire conspiracy with the names of the assassins. Caesar, however, never read it. He was clutching it, unopened, in his hand when he was attacked. Now we arrive at the theater of Pompeii, where the Senate was meeting. The popular image is of a chaotic stabbing by a mob, but the reality was more methodical, almost theatrical. The conspiracy was massive. Around 60 senators were in on it. They weren't a random group of enemies. They were his colleagues, some even his friends, and they had a plan. The first to approach was Tullius Cimber, who pretended to plead for his exiled brother. He grabbed Caesar's shoulders and pulled down his toga. This was the signal. It was also a deliberate act. By baring Caesar's neck and torso, they were treating him not just as a politician, but as a sacrificial victim. This leads to a fascinating, lesser-known theory. The conspirators, many of whom were staunch traditionalists, may have seen the killing as an act of devotio, or a tyrannicism ritual. In ancient times, a king who overstepped could be killed as an offering to the gods to restore the republic. Each conspirator was expected to strike a blow, making them all equally responsible in the eyes of the gods and the law. And the most famous blow? Brutus's. The legend that Caesar gasped, "Et tu, Brute," and "You, Brutus," is Shakespeare's drama. The Roman historian Suetonius recorded his last words differently, not in Latin, but in Greek, kai su teknon, which means, "and you too, my child." This is even more poignant, suggesting a deep personal betrayal. Some scholars even argue it was a curse, meaning, "and may the same happen to you." Let's pause the action and look at some intriguing details about the key players. First, Julius Caesar himself. We know him as a general and dictator, but he was also an author who wrote his own campaign histories and, famously, an epileptic. He may have suffered a seizure during this very stressful day, which could explain why he was initially hesitant to leave home. And Brutus? His involvement is layered with irony. His mother, Servilia, was Caesar's longtime lover. For years, rumors swirled that Brutus was actually Caesar's illegitimate son. While historians doubt this chronologically, Caesar certainly treated Brutus with unusual favor, pardoning him after a civil war. The betrayal was deeply personal, not just political. But what about the other assassins? One of the most active was Gaius Cassius Longinus. Here's a lesser-known connection. Cassius was the brother-in-law of Marcus Junius Brutus. The conspiracy was in many ways a family affair. The assassins, calling themselves the Liberators, expected to be hailed as heroes. They marched to the Capitol Hill, waving their daggers and shouting freedom. But the people of Rome hid in their houses. The applause never came. In a deeply symbolic move, the conspirators threw Caesar's body into the Roman Forum, but had his blood-stained toga carried through the streets on a pole, a grisly trophy meant to symbolize their victory over tyranny. But their plan to restore the Republic backfired spectacularly. At Caesar's public funeral, his friend Mark Antony gave a masterful speech, not just eulogizing Caesar, but reading his will to the crowd. In it, Caesar left a generous sum of money to every single citizen of Rome. The public mood instantly turned from confusion to rage. The crowd rioted, and the conspirators were forced to flee the city they had tried to save. Finally, let's explore a compelling, less popular theory. The official account states Caesar was stabbed 23 times, but how could one man inflict 23 wounds? Most would have been superficial after the first few lethal blows. A modern pathological analysis suggests that perhaps only one of the 23 wounds was fatal. The theory posits that many of the conspirators, inexperienced and nervous, merely nicked him or stabbed the body after he had already fallen, simply to be able to say they had taken part in the sacred act. It paints a picture not of an efficient execution, but of a panicked, messy, and almost ritualistic frenzy. And so, the assassination of Julius Caesar, intended to end one-man rule, instead plunged Rome into another series of civil wars, ultimately leading to the very thing the conspirators feared most: the rise of the Roman Empire under Caesar's adopted heir, Augustus. The story of the Ides of March is a reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems, filled with personal vendettas, strange omens, and unintended consequences. Thank you for joining us for this historical deep dive. If you found these details intriguing, please subscribe for more journeys into the past. Feel free to suggest topics for future videos in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well or enjoy your quiet moment.